Welcome back to Crime Scene 24/7. To our returning subscribers, thank you for always engaging. Your likes, comments, and shares keeps us motivated. And if this is your first time here, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our chilling crime scenes. Here, we dig deep, we investigate hard, and we bring you stories the mainstream left unsaid. So encourage us by engaging in our videos. Subscribe if you haven't, like, comment, and share. And what investigators discovered about the man who should have been watching, haunted even those sworn to protect. On a crisp afternoon of March 1st, 2025, 2-year-old Dane Paulsen was outside, playing in the front yard of his home north of Siletz, Oregon. His mother, Siletz Jackson, had stepped inside briefly. His father, Aaron Paulsen, had just come home. For a moment, Dane was out of sight. What followed would stretch the community's faith, wrench a family's heart, and challenge the boundaries of parental responsibility. At about 4:25 p.m. that Saturday, authorities logged Dane as missing. The yard lies just feet from the banks of the Siletz River, the house backed by trees and winding foliage, the highway close by. Hundreds of rescuers, volunteers, drones, K9s, and boats fanned out across acres of dense coastal terrain. By March 4th, the search had covered, according to one report, 682 acres and 341 miles of land and water. On March 11th, at approximately 11:13 a.m., Dane's body was discovered nearly 3 miles downstream in the river, found by volunteer diver Juan Heredia of the Angels Recovery Dive Team. In the days that followed, the medical examiner confirmed that the toddler died by drowning. Now, months later, Aaron Paulsen has been indicted on a charge of second-degree child neglect, accused of failing to watch Dane and allowing him to be in a situation that endangered his welfare. He pleaded not guilty on November 3, 2025. This is the story of Dane's disappearance and death, but also the story of every parent's worst fear, every community's desperate hope, and every system's search for answers. What exactly happened in those minutes that afternoon? How did a cheerful, water-loving toddler end up just out of reach, just out of sight, and then nearly 3 miles downstream? When did the search begin? And when did the focus turn to the river's unforgiving current? Did the household's proximity to the Siletz River play the role we fear it did? Or was this a tragic accident beyond calculation? As we walk through the timeline, talk to the voices who searched, and examine the questions still being raised by Dane's family and community, there is no easy answer, only sorrow, and the search for whatever truth remains. The afternoon sun dipped low as the search operation for Dane Paulsen entered its third full day. On March 3, 2025, over 100 volunteers and scores of law enforcement personnel converged on the countryside north of Siletz, Oregon, slicing through heavy brush and tracking the winding banks of the Siletz River. Authorities had deployed drones overhead, thermal imaging cameras probing the thickets. K9 teams worked dawn to dusk. Divers readied boats and boards for the cold current. From that vantage point, the terrain became a maze of cover and concealment. A toddler's stumble over soft earth could vanish into shadows near reeds and logs, or drift unseen into the river's flow. Officials had acknowledged the grim possibility. Even with specialized equipment and search K9s, it is possible to miss a small child that may be hidden by thick brush or other visual impairments, stated one update. At a press briefing on March 4th, Lincoln County Sheriff's Office noted that while no credible evidence of criminal activity had emerged to that point, the focus had shifted further toward the river. They revealed that divers had thoroughly searched more than 2 miles of the Siletz River near Dane's home and adjusted the search strategy accordingly. During the hunt, a lead emerged involving a white vehicle reportedly seen near the area about 2 weeks before Dane vanished. Authorities investigated but later announced there was no evidence tying the vehicle to his disappearance. In the family's home, the hours stretched heavy. Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, clung to hope amid the shout of sirens, the rustle of leaves in the coastal wind, and the ceaseless hum of search crews. She recalled the afternoon. She had stepped to the trailer behind her father's home, heard Dane's voice call for her, but when she returned outside, he was gone. "I've asked so many times throughout this entire time, and they've all pretty much been like, 'You're some hysterical mother who lives on Siletz Reservation, some native kid. He doesn't matter to them,' she later said. Volunteers, armed with headlamps, boots laced tight, marched into the darkening woodlines. Boats skimmed the river's surface, and the community kept vigil, lighting candles, holding space for one small boy who should have been at home. Yet even as the search broadened, the tension grew. How could a vibrant 2-year-old, described by authorities as friendly and fearless, yet unable to swim, vanish so completely in minutes? With the river just feet away from his play space, the fear crept in that the answer lay in the current's cold embrace. On October 16, 2025, a grand jury handed down an indictment against Aaron Scott Paulsen, the father of 2-year-old Dane Paulsen, charging him with second-degree child neglect for allegedly leaving Dane unattended in the yard of their home. The charge states that Aaron, with custody or control of Dane, did unlawfully and with criminal negligence leave Dane unattended in or at a place for such period of time as was likely to endanger the health or welfare of said child. Authorities established a bail amount of $20,000 following the filing of the warrant on October 23rd. Meanwhile, Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, has publicly disagreed with the charges, stating that more investigation is needed and that the loss of her son demands full accountability and transparency. With the legal process now set in motion, the community surrounding Siletz, Oregon watches and waits. The courtroom was silent as Aaron Paulsen stood before the judge on November 3, 2025. He pled not guilty to the charge of second-degree child neglect in the death of his son, Dane Paulsen. Prosecutors outlined that Dane, age 2, had been under his father's care when he exited the house without supervision and wandered toward the nearby river. The district attorney stated that Dane was unattended for approximately 15 minutes before his disappearance was noticed. In that same hearing, conditions of release were imposed on Paulsen. He must refrain from having unsupervised contact with children under age 5, and he was required to comply with other supervisory conditions. Meanwhile, questions linger in the community and within the family about how the property, a riverside lot on the banks of the Siletz River with easy access, could allow a toddler such as Dane to wander and end up in the water unnoticed. Investigators revealed that the trail to the river was unfenced and accessible from the yard. The hearing lasted less than 10 minutes. Paulsen's attorney appeared remotely. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, waited, her eyes reflecting grief and unanswered questions. She has since publicly asserted that she believes there are more layers to the story than a simple lapse in supervision. As the legal process advances toward an early resolution conference scheduled for December 15th, the community of the Oregon coastal region remains attentive, awaiting evidence, explanations, and perhaps closure. At its heart, a toddler vanished, a father charged, a family fractured, and a subtle fracture in understanding how everyday moments can end in unimaginable loss. The weeks after the discovery of 2-year-old Dane Paulsen's body on March 11, 2025 in the Siletz River brought a murmur of calm, yet beneath it, unresolved tension. Investigators with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office reported that a diaper recovered during the search belonged to neither Dane nor his clothing set from that day, leading them to conclude the diaper likely came from a nearby garbage area and held no evidentiary value. At the same time, Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, expressed profound dissatisfaction with how the investigation was handled. She described a moment just before her son vanished, when she heard his voice, then laughter, as though someone had tickled him, and then silence. She says when she stepped outside, Dane was gone. Although the sheriff's office initially issued a description of a white van seen in the area 2 weeks prior to Dane's disappearance, they subsequently stated there was no evidence linking it to the case. By October and into November 2025, prosecutors made clear that the decision to indict Dane's father, Aaron Paulsen, stemmed from their finding. Dane had been under his father's care when he left the house. The father acknowledged no other adult was supervising outside, and Dane was left unattended for approximately 15 minutes before his absence was realized. Meanwhile, the release conditions set by the court stated that Aaron Paulsen must avoid unsupervised contact with children under the age of 5. As the winter of 2025 approached, the small coastal community continued to wrestle with grief, unanswered questions, and the weight of a toddler's life lost under circumstances they cannot fully explain. In the weeks following the body's recovery, investigators from the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office and the Lincoln County District Attorney's Office painstakingly pieced together how 2-year-old Dane Paulsen came to be in the cold, rushing waters of the Siletz River on March 1, 2025. A grand jury convened on October 16, 2025, after hearing testimony from investigators about the massive search effort and the terrain's hazards. The body of evidence led them to return an indictment against Dane's father, Dane Paulsen, on a charge of second-degree child neglect, specifically alleging that while in custody or control of Dane, he unlawfully and with criminal negligence left him unattended in a place where his health and welfare could be endangered. The sheriff's office defended its investigative timeline. Searchers combed brush, monitored the river's edge, interviewed volunteers, reviewed surveillance footage, and followed multiple tips before concluding that Dane likely wandered toward the water's bank and entered the river. This sequence of events, they say, formed the basis for the neglect charge, not evidence of foul play. Through all of it, the community held on to the grief of a life ended too soon, the ongoing questions about how a toddler could vanish so completely, and the hope that answers might still bring a measure of peace to Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson. The court's conditional release terms placed fresh weight on the legal burden now resting on Dane Paulsen. With the arraignment concluded, the judge mandated that he maintain no unsupervised contact with children under 5, a condition that underscored the gravity of the charge. The local media spotlight shifted to the small, unfenced path that led directly from the Paulsen property to the bank of the Siletz River. Investigators emphasized that Dane, age 2 at the time of his disappearance, was in the exclusive care of his father when he walked out of the house, unseen, unchallenged, and unchecked. In a public statement, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office said roughly 40 investigators had followed leads, reviewed surveillance footage, interviewed community members, and explored the river-edge terrain before presenting the case to a grand jury. For Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, the proceedings offered no comfort. She has voiced that the investigation lacked clarity and openness, pointing to strange sightings and unanswered questions, including a vehicle near the property and someone taking photos of nearby trail cameras prior to Dane's disappearance. As the community watches the legal process unfold toward a scheduled early resolution conference in December, the landscape remains one of fragile trust, raw grief, and the unresolved emptiness of a child's absence. The legal journey into the case of 2-year-old Dane Paulsen took an important turn on October 16, 2025, when a grand jury in Lincoln County Sheriff's Office's jurisdiction returned a true bill of indictment against his father, Dane Paulsen. Investigators had presented extensive testimony, including the terrain at the family property next to the Siletz River, surveillance footage, witness statements, and their conclusion that Dane walked out of his home yard and into the river's edge under his father's watch. In public filings, the indictment states that Dane Paulsen did unlawfully and with criminal negligence leave Dane Paulsen, a child under the age of 10 years, unattended in or at a place for such period of time as was likely to endanger the health or welfare of said child. Court records show that when faced with the indictment, Dane Paulsen appeared in court on November 3, 2025, and entered a not guilty plea to the charge of second-degree child neglect. As part of his release, the court imposed conditions including that he must have no unsupervised contact with children under age 5 and comply with other oversight protocols. In response to mounting inquiries by the community and media, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office issued a formal media release on October 30, 2025, detailing that over 40 investigators had pursued leads, interviewed tipsters, reviewed surveillance, and combed the riverbank, affirming the scale and depth of the investigation. Through all of this, the shadow of Dane's absence lingers in the small Oregon community. His laughter, once hearing only moments before, now replaced by the hush of unanswered questions. The following morning, investigators convened a detailed briefing with the family of 2-year-old Dane Paulsen and community members to underscore the complexity of the coastal terrain surrounding his home. They walked through the property perimeter, just beyond a rural yard that led to a steep embankment and into the Siletz River, and pointed out how easily a toddler might access the water's edge. During that session, the lead detective explained to Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, that the trail from the yard to the river was not fenced, gating was minimal, and the current of the Siletz River is deceptively strong, especially in the spring melt. The detective emphasized that although no evidence of foul play emerged, the conditions placed a child his age at extreme risk in a matter of minutes. The family's attention turned to the clothing Dane wore that day, retrieved from reports: a blue shark-patterned t-shirt, small blue shorts, and red sandals, items that were photographed and circulated during the search. In the investigatory timeline, Dane's father, Dane Paulsen, had arrived home shortly before 4 p.m. on March 1, 2025, and entered the residence. At that moment, Dane was outside. By the time the family realized he was missing, about 15 minutes had elapsed, according to prosecutors. Meanwhile, community memorials began to form. Volunteers tied green ribbons to the railing of the nearby Ohala Bridge that spans the Siletz River, not far from the Paulsen home. Neighbors shared stories of hearing faint laughter, then a harsh stillness, as the search for Dane expanded across riverbanks, forest floor, and water channels. In court documents made public just before the arraignment, the DA's office underscored that marshaled evidence included drone footage, statement transcripts from key search team volunteers, and geographic mapping of the river's flow from the property to the recovery point 3 miles downstream. According to the medical examiner's report, Dane's body showed no signs of trauma other than drowning. In the dimmed courtroom of late morning, the ripple of hushed voices carried through the gallery as the prosecution and defense exchanged glances. Under the gleam of fluorescent light, prosecuting attorney Jenna Wallace addressed the court. The evidence submitted to the grand jury and later to the indictment showed that on March 1, 2025, 2-year-old Dane Paulsen was left in the sole care of his father, Dane Paulsen, in the yard of their home beside the Siletz River when, unbeknownst to the child watcher, Dane began a route toward the river's edge. The court heard the father's own statement. He admitted there was no other adult supervising outside at the time Dane walked past the threshold of the house, and that a period of approximately 15 minutes passed before the child's absence was realized. Evidence introduced by investigators included aerial mapping of the property showing an unfenced path leading from the yard to the riverbank, search logs detailing the diver's recovery of Dane's body on March 11, 2025, about 3 miles downstream from the home, and the autopsy conclusion that he died by drowning with no signs of additional trauma. In the gallery, Dane's mother, Siletz Jackson, sat with her arms folded, her face etched with exhaustion and grief. Her attorney rose, gently reminding the court of her belief that more remains unknown. Questions about how quickly Dane could move, how the yard's layout allowed access to the river, and what else the terrain around the home concealed. The defense cross-examined investigators about whether the path to the river was truly accessible to a toddler doing what toddlers do, exploring, wandering, slipping. They noted the lack of direct eyewitness who saw Dane enter the water and raised the fact that the yard backs onto the river less than a minute's walk from the house. Closing their argument, the prosecution emphasized that the father's legal duty extended beyond physical gates and fences. It included a consistent, meaningful watch over a toddler in a hazardous environment. They stated that by stepping indoors and leaving Dane outside unaccompanied, Dane Paulsen failed to safeguard his child's welfare. As the gavel neared its rest, spectators shifted in their seats, each aware that the next step in the legal process would determine whether this was deemed a heartbreaking accident or a failure of duty that contributed to the death of a boy who should still be playing in his yard. The days following the arraignment carried a heavy silence through the courtroom and the coastal woods. While the legal gears turned, the community of Siletz, Oregon continued to hold vigil for the memory of 2-year-old Dane Paulsen. His small shoes, favorite shark print shirt, and the fading echo of his laughter lingering in the breeze. On the banks of the Siletz River, where Dane's body was recovered on March 11, 2025, about 3 miles downstream of his home, volunteers left flowers, ribbons, and teddy bears in tribute. In the courtroom hallways, Siletz Jackson, Dane's mother, stood resolute though her shoulders bore the weight of grief no parent should ever feel. Investigators continued to refine their reconstruction of the afternoon of March 1st, 2025, the time Dane last played just out of sight, the brief minutes his father's attention shifted indoors, the yard's unfenced path leading to the river that momentarily opened the door to tragedy. While criminal activity was not alleged at that time, the charge of second-degree child neglect brought against Dane Paulsen has stirred debate about parental duty, environment, and accident. In homes across the region, parents reviewed their own fences, their own moments of supervision. And in the heart of Siletz, Washington Coast volunteers and neighbors asked, could we have done anything differently? Meanwhile, the legal process creeps forward. Questions remain unanswered, and Dane's absence echoes in the quiet corners of the yard he once occupied. If you've been moved by Dane's story, if you believe that truth and accountability matter, please help us bring attention to this and other stories of children lost, lives changed, and communities shaken. Subscribe to our channel, Crime Scene 24/7. Click the like button to support this wider conversation. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and share this video so the story is not buried and so more voices can weigh in. We have many more true crime stories to bring you, cases that deserve to be seen and heard. So please subscribe now, like, comment, and share.